What's crackin' and chiropractin summoners? Get stretched out, loosen up, and then promptly have a seat, because you might be here a while. It's time for Patch Breakdown. Now, if patch 11.17 was meant to throw a wrench into solo queue, then 11.18 and the upcoming 11.19 are to carefully but intentionally shake up the meta going into Worlds. And that's never pissed anyone off before. Surely, Jugger, not. But, anywho, it's enough living in the past. The future is now, y'all, and we've got a lot of changes to cover, including buffs to Fizz, Zed, Draven, Camille, and more. Many, many more, so here we go. This is the 11.18 Patch Breakdown. Let's start with Aphelios. His core identity, besides generating one meme that definitely doesn't ever get old, is as a hyper-scaling ADC with a bunch of crazy guns and flashing colors that can terrorize the late game, and your eyeballs. Given all that, his early laning has been deemed just a little too strong, so he's getting his base AD reduced from 57 to 55. As for Ashe, the oldest champion in the game somehow keeps finding her way into the meta right around this time of year. And besides her game-changing ultimate, her laning is extremely devastating and even more tilting. Well, straighten up, y'all, because the cooldown on her W is getting a big early nerf, going up by 4 seconds early, up to 18 at rank 1, 14.5 at rank 2, 11 and 7.5 at ranks 3 and 4. Like Aphelios, Camille's strength is in her absolutely dominant late game. And in the right hands, even her early trading power can be exceptional. And given that this patch is targeted at Worlds, everyone is assumed to have the right hands. Don't take that take to Reddit, though. Her passive Adaptive Defenses now has a higher cooldown at the level 1 and level 7 breakpoints, going from 16 and 13 seconds to 20 and 15 seconds, leaving that later level 13 breakpoint unchanged. Draven's fun. Everyone loves Draven, especially Draven. And while he has his space in the meta right now as a Kalista-esque early game dominant pocket pick, Riot feels that the Glorious Executioner needs, well, an execute. And this change should help his characteristic showmanship too. So here's the change. His ult will now execute enemies if it drops an enemy's health to or below Draven's current adoration stacks. Also, and this one is phenomenal, his adoration stack count updates now go automatically into all chat. That's incredible. Thank you, Riot. On release, it felt like Dr. Mundo fluctuated in and out of the meta, and the consensus was inconsistent on him, if a little negative at the highest level. He does in fact go where he pleases, but traditional tanks need a way to stop others from going where they please, and Mundo was not able to do that. They want to keep that identity, but in an effort to combat the power of grievous wounds, which has been a goal of Riot's this season, Dr. Mundo's ult will now, on cast, immediately heal 15, 20, and 25% of his HP at the different ranks as opposed to a flat 20, and this heal, this initial one, will now ignore grievous wounds. To balance that out, the healing over time on his ult, that's the second half of it, will now only heal for 40 and 60% of his max HP over 10 seconds, as opposed to 45 to 70. This amount will be affected by grievous wounds. Assassins in the mid lane are always fun, especially around Worlds, so Riot is pushing the title Trickster back into the meta by making his gameplay hopefully a little less ult dependent and shifting some power into his early game. His passive now reduces damage from basic attacks by 8 plus 2% AP, up from 4 plus 1% AP. That's a pretty massive difference, and it could leave some of his already favorable matchups leaning even more in his favor in lane. Separately, his W's on-hit damage is going up by 10 base damage at all ranks, and his ult's Guppy damage, Chomper, and Gigalodon damage, which are the 3 levels of strength that the ult takes on based on how far the skill shot travels, are all losing some strength in their base damage and AP scaling. Gangplank got some love in the reworks that headed his way in 11.17, which, among other things, made his Q count specifically as a ranged attack so that he couldn't abuse Grasp of the Undying quite as much. Well, that worked. Very well, a little too well, so as a result he's getting a chunky additional bit of base HP back, bringing that up to 570, and his HP growth per level is up from 82 to 90. Jace is really strong and has been all year at high levels, but he's not without his counterplay, and that's a good thing. Riot doesn't want to mess with a good thing. However, they do feel that he gets a little too much mobility for a quasi-ranged champion, so the bonus move speed and ghost duration from his passive is going down actually a pretty good amount, from 1.25 seconds to just 0.75 seconds. Jinx has also found her home in the meta as it shook out later in the year alongside other hyper-scaling ADCs like Aphelios. But unlike the Weapon of the Faithful, she's getting a slight nudge to help out her early game. Mana cost of Fishbones is now ever so slightly less at early ranks, and scaling from 16 to 20 as opposed to the flat 20. Kai'Sa has been one of, if not the most controversial ADCs in the game since she's been released, especially around this time of year. And as much as she did dominate the professional scene early on in the year, after being nudged repeatedly down the pecking order, her presence has not been nearly at the same level as it was. Maybe to a fault. She's getting a little bit of help in her late game only, since many of those aforementioned nerfs were there to target her early trading, and those were seen as successes. The cooldown on her E supercharge is going from 16 to 12 seconds to losing 1.5 seconds at each rank, instead bottoming out as just 10 seconds at max rank. Still on the ADC train, another small nudge is coming to edge cases, and this time it's to Kalista, the poster child of lane-dominant bot lane picks. Her ult especially is an absolutely devastating all-in tool, but it's a little too guaranteed right at level 6 at the highest level, and let's not forget, that's where all these changes are headed towards. The knockup duration at rank 1 is losing a half second, and the rank 2 variety is losing a quarter of a second, leaving max rank Kalista ult untouched. Karma mains were big mad after 11-16 removed her from the pro play scene a little too much, so Riot's given her some power back with, as they call it, generic buffs. Her base armor is going from 26 to 28, and the base shield on her E is going from 80 to 260 to 90 to 270. Back to ADCs, Kog'Maw is getting some buffs. The AP scaling on his E, Void Ooze, is getting a hefty buff going from 50% to 70% while keeping the same base damage. Lee Sin. Can't escape the patch notes, can you? Lane Sin had his presence reduced, but one of the best junglers in the game is still really strong, and was picked or banned in 100% of LCK games during patch 11-16. True story. So, like Xin Zhao before him, he's losing some of his base AD, going from 70 to 68 for the Blind Monk. Let's talk Lillia. She's been a jungler pretty much through and through in pro play, but she does have that lane flexibility. And part of her strength in both roles has been her innate sustain, maybe to a disproportionate degree. So that's what's getting hit in a few areas. Her base health regen is going from 1.5 to 0.5, and her health regen growth per level is down to 0.55 instead of 0.75. The healing she gets from her passive, however, is going up a good amount, from 18 to 94 to 27 to 104. Additionally, her Q's passive stack duration is going up to 6.5 seconds from 5.5, and finally her Swirl Seed cooldown is going down by 2 seconds from 18 to 16. Miss Fortune is getting a buff, and no, it's not to her support version. Shout out Gorilla one time though. It's pretty simple. She's getting 2 more waves on her ult at each rank. Instead of 12, 14, and 16 waves, she now gets 14, 16, and 18. Wombo and combo, friends. Morgana used to be a jungler, remember? Me neither. She's a support now, says Riot. Her Black Shield is getting its cooldown reduced by 2 seconds at all ranks, going from 26 to 18 seconds to 24 to 16 seconds. This should, in theory, make her winning matchups even more winnable, which has an additional synergistic effect because those supports are the ones dominating the meta right now, like Leona, Alistar, Nautilus, and Thresh. Qiyana is maybe back? Riot has been pretty direct about its intent to cautiously reintroduce her into the jungle, and here's how they plan on doing it. First, her base attack speed is going up from 0.625 to 0.688, but her health regen is going down from 1.8 to 1.5. Her Q now does 25% bonus damage to monsters, but her E's base damage is going down by 10 at all ranks, going from 60 to 180 to 50 to 170. There's a lot here, and wait, there's more. Additionally, and this is really high-level nitty-gritty stuff, but her EQ combo is her bread and butter, so that's getting some changes. If Qiyana's target begins a dash or teleport during her EQ buffer, the Q will aim at their last position before dashing or teleporting. And if Qiyana has an EQ buffered but does not have vision of the target when the cast completes, the Q will aim at, similarly, the last position she could see her target in. Renekton's another one of those champs that has stood the test of time in Season 11 and has a comfortable space in the meta, albeit still a pretty strong one, as an early game power pick with deadly sustain and lockdown CC with his empowered W. The latter is getting targeted here for a small nerf to the Butcher of the Sands. The empowered stun is straight up losing half a second of duration, going from 1.5 seconds to just 1, and the empowered self-lockout duration is going from 0.75 seconds to 0.52 seconds, which should bring it in line with his quote-unquote unempowered W. Remember when Rumble was a jungler? Me neither. He's still a jungler though. Riot said so. Like most junglers that were OP in pro play, it came down to clear speed. Riot tooketh away some of that from the Mechanized Menace in patch 11.13, so now they are givething some of it back. His passive's bonus attack speed is getting decreased early but buffed late, going from a flat 50% to 20 to 80% based on level. And his all-important W shield's cooldown is a little more friendly, going from 7 to 6 seconds across 5 ranks to just a flat 6. It ain't much, but it's honestly enough to maybe break the international meta again. Who knows? I'm excited. Are you excited? Singed and Soraka are getting some pretty wild buffs, both to do with Grievous Wounds. For Singed, he now applies Grievous Wounds on any target he damages during the duration of his ult, Insanity Potion. Soraka, on the other hand, now has her ult remove Grievous Wounds before applying the heal. The Twitter threads around patch notes and the dev team changes can be an unbelievable, wild, and lawless place, often full of negativity. But my goodness, when these Taliyah changes came through, I had never seen such a sense of elation and gratitude from only one champion's mains in my life. The incoming buffs are to her Q, with the goal of making her a mid lane flex heading into Worlds. Casting Threaded Volley on Worked Ground now refunds 50% of the spell's cooldown. The radius of Worked Ground is down from 450 units to 300, and its duration is down from 45 seconds to 25, but clearly those weren't enough to dampen the enthusiasm I found on Twitter, of all places. That's saying something. Assassins in the mid lane are a tricky thing to balance, absolutely. But ones that Riot wants to make mid-jungle flexes? Eat your heart out. Enter Talon. This fix sees Riot pulling two of its favorite jungler levers, making abilities deal additional damage to monsters, and speeding up clear. It's hoping to kill two birds with one stone on this one, making Talon's W deal 50% bonus damage to monsters. Talon mid, however, is actually a bit too strong for Riot's liking, so his Q's base damage is going from 65 to 165 to 65 to 145. Thresh has been just about as plug-and-play as they come in the support role, so here comes yet another nerf and a slight late-game buff that may or may not actually be impactful at the highest level. His base movement speed is going down from 335 to 330, and his Flay is getting its maximum passive bonus magic damage as a descaling nerfed from 100 to 200% to 80 to 200%. But it will do 1.5 more damage per soul, up from just 1 more damage per soul. Trundle's back, and that's fun, but not as a support. Riot said so. Since his pillar is usually maxed first by supports and last by junglers, that's where the divergence in his play is being addressed. Specifically, the slow on his pillar at max ranked is getting nerfed pretty substantially, going from 32 to 60% down to just 30 to 46%. Twitch is getting some buffs to make those moments where he turbo mows through an enemy team after he was hiding even more electric. It is Worlds after all. The bonus AD on Spray and Pray is going from 30 to 60 to 40 to 70. Urgot in the right hands was a very fun top lane pick with some unbelievable scaling potential, if he can get there. With ranged champions becoming more and more prevalent in the top lane and causing him trouble of getting to that late game crazy state, Riot is giving him a little more early trading help into those tougher matchups by lowering the cooldown on his Q from 12 to 8 seconds to just 10 to 8 seconds and reducing its mana cost at all ranks from 80 to 70. For Varus, it's pretty simple. He's another lane bully, and you know what we do to bullies in 2021. Exactly. We lower their base AD from 61 to 59, and we lower their passive's bonus attack speed on non-champion kills from a flat 20% to a now scaling 10 to 20%. The more you know. Yone will occasionally see play in pro, but right now his brother is seeing more time there, and depending on who you ask, that's the worst thing like ever. His W shielding per champion hit after the first is doubling from 25% to 50% of its base value. This should help out in pro play, as this niche part of his kit can tend to be one of the more skill-expressive ones. Yuumi buffs. Woof. Everyone's favorite texting while laning champion is getting a change to her passive in 11.18, increasing its cooldown from 18 to 6 seconds based on level to 14 to 6 seconds. This should, in theory, make her into a slightly more aggressive support, as oxymoronic as that might sound. But Riot said it's keeping an eye on Yuumi if things get too crazy before the final Worlds patch in 11.19. Zed, like Talon, is another swing at an assassin mid-jungle flex. Similar to Talon, he's getting a buff to his passive that makes it so that it now deals 100% bonus damage against monsters, but still capped at 300 against epic monsters. Finally, to round off champion changes, Zoe. She's also getting a buff, and this one reverts the cooldown changes she got to her Sleepy Trouble bubble way back in 9.6. You all remember those, right? Ugh. Well, the cooldown on her E now goes from 16 to 12 instead of 20 to 14. It's pretty substantial. Let's talk items. 3 of them specifically. Ravenous Hydra, Titanic Hydra, and Umbroglaive. It's a small one for the first 2. The passive cleave on the items no longer draws turret aggro. Umbroglaive's changes are far more significant, however. The cost of the item is going down from 2,600 to 2,400 gold, but its lethality is also going down from 12 to 10 as well. Lastly, on the runes front, it's Predator. Remember Predator? Well, those turbo chem tank nerfs wiped that item out of pro play, thank goodness, but as a result it's made champions like Lillia, Skarner, and Hecarim that rely on a little zoomy zoom to be successful gankers. Instead of retreading that cursed turbo chem tank path, Predator is getting some buffs. The move speed ramp up time is going from 1.5 seconds to 1 second, and the max move speed is going up a pretty good amount as well, up from 45% to 60%. And finally, they've returned. In-game and out-of-game, Pentakill is back. And who else to lead the charge on the band's return but the ruined king himself, Viego. And he's joined by the whole gang, Yorick, Mordekaiser, Olaf, Karthus, Kayle, and Sona, all of whom are now getting not only a new Pentakill 3 Lost Chapter skin, but also chromas, including a special Dissonance of Pentakill Viego chroma. Ooh. Oh, and Hextech Tristana, too. This one is a massive patch, and it's the first of 2 that Riot is implementing as it looks to give the meta a swift kick of love before Worlds. 11.18 is meant to push some boundaries, with 11.19, coming out in 2 weeks' time, meant to focus more on correcting and balancing those pushed boundaries. There are some other bug fixes and some smaller things that we didn't hit in this video, so please make sure to read up on all the changes on our website, keep up to date with us on Twitter @.esports, and please like and subscribe right here to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on the video front. It really does help us out and mean a lot. Until next time, thanks for watching, enjoy the patch, and go in peace, Summoners.